the citizens and the community the way it needs to. So fine tune it.
Was that ordinance a major impact, or would you say it was the city's rosy, some would say Pollyanna attitude going into WTO, or the fact that that intelligence ordinance existed that allowed what happened to occur?
I think the intelligence ordinance played a major role, and of course the police department, and specifically those involved in information gathering systems, could comment better than we in the time that we've had to look at it. But within our experience, which has been extensive in not only our own careers but in traveling throughout the United States and having acquaintances within other agencies in this field, it's a situation where here in Seattle, police efforts were stymied often because they couldn't share information with others. And every other law enforcement agency in the state knows of the Seattle ordinance, and often are not only reluctant but refuse to share information with them. That's a tremendous handicap to have in the police department's preventive role. If you're going to try to prevent something, then it's necessary to try to preempt it through obtaining information that is intelligence. And consequently, it did play a major role. Now, you were fortunate here, and I don't mean to say that facetiously, but the good fortune is that there was so much open source documentation and intelligence that they were able to act upon that. If it had not been for that, there would be no way that the chief could have authorized any intelligence gathering within the city, because they couldn't have established any kind of reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. So it was very important. And I would not use your term in terms of the city's reaction being Pollyanna-like. I think what they did is they based their decisions and their initial planning, though flawed, and I think our report makes that very clear, upon what happened in the past. And we have had large operations here in the past. We had major events that occurred peacefully. And so they unfortunately took that as being a predictor of the future being the same. And they got caught short. There's no two ways about that. The mayor has admitted responsibility. The chief has admitted responsibility. Everybody who are in positions to direct activities by the police department and for the police department have admitted responsibility for that. So I don't call that Pollyanna. No one did anything intentionally here to cause things of an untoward nature to happen.
You're suggesting in here that because of the provisions of the intelligence ordinance, the police department was unable to infiltrate the Ruckus Society, for example. So I'm wondering, you think that it's an appropriate action of the police department to infiltrate groups like the Ruckus Society? And Mayor Schell, would you back any revisions to the intelligence ordinance to allow this to occur? Well, I'd like to hear from...
Well, I'll start, and let me say that any organization that is gathering together in most states, any group of people that gather together to agree to break laws, there's a term for that.
Founding fathers, perhaps?
That's a good one. And the review team supports the founding fathers, if that's a question.
And personally, I have great difficulty making a strong correlation between that and what happened.
How about the civil rights movement? That's maybe a better analogy.
Well, we're getting into areas that are far and away from this. What we're saying is that if there is a place for professional police intelligence efforts that are done ethically and morally and professionally correct. There's a place for that. If there wasn't, then the U.S. Capitol would have been blown up in the 60s. You know that. Is that a good idea? Is the Founding Fathers all for that? So the point I'm getting at is there is a place for it. It can't be abused. If it is abused, police officers should be fired or they should be prosecuted. We're not saying to throw away people's constitutional protections. That's not our message. Our message is appropriate intelligence gathering where there's going to be violence, and It was mentioned, somebody mentioned the Black Panther Party. Black Panther Party murdered an awful lot of people in this country, especially police officers, and it would have been nice if that police officer might have known that he was going to be assassinated. Certainly intelligence in the direction of something like the Black Panther Party is appropriate, but if it's violating the constitutional liberties of the Black Panther Party, it is not, and we don't agree with it.
The report appears to kind of spread the blame for what happened around over a pretty wide area, from the protesters themselves to the media to county councilors to the chief of police, but there's not a whole lot of mention of Mayor Schell. How much responsibility do you feel that he should take in this?
In our report, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think it's fairly obvious if you follow the principle that says the leader is responsible and accountable, that Mayor Schell is responsible for what happened because he is the head of city government. Chief Norm Stamper is responsible because he was the head of the police department. Ed Joyner, the deputy chief, was responsible because the authority and responsibility from Chief Stamper flowed to him through delegation. So these people are responsible in terms of their spans of control. However, if we say that the mayor's responsible for everything that happened out on the street, in reality, that doesn't make any sense. If an incident occurs out on the street and there is supervision there, then it's that supervisor's responsibility to take care of it. He is the one that's responsible. What we found out in our review, and it relates directly to the mayor, and it relates to others too, but you brought up the issue of the mayor's involvement. Mr. McCarthy pointed out from the outset that we have not seen any attempts, have not experienced any attempts to influence us by the mayor, by his staff, by the chief of police, now the interim chief of police, by anybody on the police department. No one's tried to influence us. This has been as objective and as honest as we could possibly make it. But in terms of responsibility, we were told going into this effort by a number of people that such and such was the mayor's fault. This was the mayor's fault. That was the mayor's fault. Well, you know what? When we got into this survey, or this independent review, we found out that this wasn't always the case. There were a number of things that occurred that the mayor was blamed for that he had no knowledge of. Is he responsible? He's responsible because he's the mayor, but not because he knew of what was happening, because many of the things he was blamed for
Such as?
was not his responsibility in terms of involvement. The incident that you see, if you addressed the report at this point, at 914 Virginia, we felt very strongly, and Mr. McCarthy alluded to it earlier, that action should have been taken on the 29th when the anarchists and others first moved into the hotel supply building there. And subsequently, in interviewing officers, we found that almost all of them blamed the mayor for that. And so initially we said, how would the mayor have anything to do with this? Well, when we more deeply, we find out that the only involvement by the mayor's office is a phone call that was received by one of his staff. It was placed by the head of Lehigh, the Low Income Housing Institute, asking that the power be turned on at 914 Virginia. And that was deferred to the police department. The decision was made not to do it. So everything that was blamed the mayor in that instance was the responsibility of the police department.
So the only communication with regard to the 914 Virginia house that you found was one phone call to the mayor's office? Did you review any other communications?
We reviewed thousands of pieces of communication.
Like you said, in regard to that specific incident.
And that specific incident, there were other documents that reflect that Sharon, who was the head of Lehigh, was principally involved not only in providing blankets and other items of equipment and necessities once the power was turned off, was principally involved in negotiation. There were other people from the police department who were involved, but no direct involvement by the mayor or his staff. And we looked at everything we could to refute that because we've been told that it was the case, and it turned out that it wasn't. And believe me, we are not uncritical of the mayor, and he knows that. We've told him that. There are many things that we were critical of him for. But we did it because we said from the outset that we were going to be objective, we were going to be honest, and if there was something that went wrong, we were going to identify it. But let's be fair about this. If somebody does something, then they're responsible for it, and if you're going to blame them, blame them. But if they're not, then at least do homework and find out what really happened, not what somebody on the street alludes to be the truth.
You know, yesterday the ACLU had their little get together and handed out their report, and they're set that a lot of the protesters' civil liberties were totally denied and abused. What did you guys find on that issue?
Do you want to address that?
We certainly don't agree. I think we probably come from a different perspective than the ACLU. And our position in terms of evaluating a city's performance, a police department's performance, is that in the exercising of a group or a person's right to free speech and free expression, it doesn't trample or tread over anybody else's right to move or breathe or function freely. And I don't think anybody in this room disagrees with that. So there comes a point in time where there's a make or break circumstance, and people who are demonstrating go beyond their constitutional right to free speech and freedom of expression, and maybe that's their intent. Maybe it is their intent down the center of the city so that no fire truck can go through, so that if anybody has a heart attack, that the ambulance can't get there. We mentioned citizens who live here, who work in downtown, who were unable to get to their families and remove their child from daycare, and are now caught in the conundrum of being told by the daycare center, look, we can't wait any longer, we're going to have to call the police. Where does that young woman's constitutional rights start and end? So we felt that was important to put in here, and if you read it, you'll find it. So the trampling of the demonstrators' rights, they had a right to freedom of expression and to march, and the police never hindered that and never stopped that. The only time that the police became directly involved in any way as a barrier to them was when they declared an unlawful assembly and directed the people to leave, when it was in fact an unlawful assembly. And every state in the union has a law like that. And as you may have noted, there was nobody leaving.
Their answer to that, because that question was asked, was that that's their responsibility, that's their right, as you know, that's their right to protest and do that, and that it's the city's right to make sure everybody else's rights aren't impinged on.
Okay.
So where do we go?
Here's where we go. First of all, the thing I think you need to be most interested in is you were there, you saw the performance of a handful of police officers in the face of numerous hours of incredible stress and pressure. I go around the country to different places. I was in Florida and Pennsylvania last week, and all over the United States. And this is the truth. What I get back from police officers in other cities, they're saying, I can't believe that the Seattle police officers reacted as well as they did. If that happened here, we'd have far more injuries. That's the truth. I think Seattle is very fortunate to have the quality and the level of police officer that has the built-in, if you will, built-in control that you won't find in police officers in most other parts of this country. And in some places, it's going to be more absent than others. But the fact is that they handled themselves incredibly well. And the suggestion that demonstrators' rights were trampled because there was chemical agents being used. I can only say that once a crowd refuses to disperse and the problem doesn't diminish and the violent activity is continuing and it's growing, there is no other option but tear gas unless we want to use batons and billy clubs, which is what the ACLU seems to suggest, which would mean then that the only alternative for the police to disperse a crowd would be to hit people with batons, and I don't think any of us want to see that. That is a mistake. So I would like to ask Dr. Odland to talk a little bit about the positions that the police officers were in, if she would, please. And I'll move over here.
I'd like to ask the mayor just one quick question because we do have to leave. Do you feel exonerated at all, Mr. Mayor, by this report?
No, as I said, I'm still the responsible official, and I certainly wish this would not have happened. The road was paved with good intentions by a lot of people, and obviously I'm disappointed with the events of those 2 days. I think our department did a good job. I think there were lessons to be learned. Clearly, more robust contingency planning. An operational contingency plan is something that we need. As I said at the outset, we need a system where the mayor and the council and the proponents of hosting a meeting, when there's going to be the use of Seattle resources from a security standpoint, that we have a clear understanding of the risk that we're taking and the ability to say no. And that if we do find ourselves in this circumstance, we need to be sure that we've got a strong operational plan. So I look at this as an unprecedented event that I'm thankful that nobody got seriously injured, that we got through it, and that the challenge now as a community is to learn from it and not repeat it with the best of our ability. And I think that's what will be the positive outcome of this.
Your recommendation for a screening process suggests one of two, if not both things. Either that the police department is not up to another event, such as WTO, or it's not worth the trouble.
I think what it says is that the more knowledge we can have about an event and the risks that we're being asked to take as a community, the better. And that the mayor and the council have a responsibility to do that. That is already
Hi, I'm Wayne Knepp with Conservation Resources Division, and welcome to Netline. We're out at the South Seattle substation, one of the major facilities where power is brought in from our transmission lines at very high voltages and then stepped down to lower voltages by transformers for distribution to customers. The skilled men and women who work on these transformers tend to work out of sight, away from most customers and even the view of many of their fellow employees. In this edition of Netline, we're going to see just what these workers do. We'll also learn about another less publicized work group, the Industrial Conservation Team, which is helping its customers cut back huge amounts of electricity consumption. Then we'll see how you and your family can learn about some of the history of City Light while enjoying a relaxing boat ride on beautiful Diablo Lake at the Skagit Hydroelectric Project.
When people see City Light workers in action, they most often are watching line workers, electrician journeymen, and apprentices who are out in the neighborhoods, usually high above the ground, maintaining and repairing the lines that carry power to homes and businesses. What customers don't see is another important group of electrical workers who make sure there is power in those lines. Those workers are known as electrician constructors. This group is responsible for maintaining and repairing the equipment that helps distribute the power to customers. Electricity is transmitted from one of the generation sources over high-tension power lines at extremely high voltages. This power needs to be stepped down through the use of transformers, which range from large pieces of equipment located in substations on down to the small cans that sit atop power poles and make the voltages usable by household appliances. Power is routed to and from these transformers via switches and circuit breakers. Electrician constructors are the specialists who keep these important parts of the system up and running. Much of the work is preventive maintenance, keeping the equipment from failing and causing customers to lose power. Electrician constructors can be found working at one of the hydroelectric generation projects, inside the electrical shop out of the elements, or outside at a substation, working in the rain or whatever else nature has in store on any particular day. Constructors must master several skills, ranging from operation of standard tools like wrenches and hammers, to heavy lifting equipment like cranes and lifts, to sensitive metering devices. In addition to hands-on work, the constructors may also need to apply mathematical computations and deciphering of maps and blueprints in their everyday work.
Great opportunity to do the full range of construction. You get to use your mind when it comes to electrical circuits and the scheme of things, and you have to have your head cut in because you're working with a lot of high voltage and all of surrounding you, so you really have to know where you're at, and then you get to use your hands and your body and actually physically put in electrical apparatus, and it's a great all-around construction job.
Working in a substation can be dangerous work. Voltages can range from 26,000 volts to 240,000 volts. However, electrician constructors follow a coordinated safety regime that lets them go about their work safely.
About 80% of our job is knowing how to de-energize equipment so we can work on it. We don't work on it in a high voltage state because the voltages are too high. So our main job is to figure out how to de-energize things properly so that no one gets hurt.
The work is coordinated with power dispatchers at the System Control Center, the nerve center for City Light's thousands of miles of power lines and associated equipment. While testing transformers, safety is also important, not only to the electrician constructors, but also to other personnel who may be working in the same area. This test is designed to make sure it can carry the designed load, operate safely, and will last the manufacturer's stated lifetime. These transformers are scheduled to be installed in commercial buildings. Others tested will go into substations, underground vaults, pad mounts, and on top of power poles. It's best to find a problem here rather than after one has been installed in a project. Electrician constructors are trained through a 4-year apprenticeship training program. This program not only trains, but exposes the workers to the different kinds of jobs the utility has for them in the future.
As an apprentice, I get to do a lot of outside rotations as well. It's great. It's the best job there is.
This is Scott Thompson reporting for Seattle City Light.
Starting in 1905 and for its first 7 decades, Seattle City Light met its customers' increasing demand for electricity by building new power plants. Then in the late 1970s, a new concept took hold: conservation. Instead of building more electric generating plants, City Light met some new load demand by helping customers find ways to use less of its product. And as Superintendent Jorge Carrasco recently told a group of business people, then as today, that makes good business sense.
It is by far the cheapest source of energy the utility can get. It avoids very expensive investments that we would otherwise have to make. Today, 11% of our load is reflected in this conservation number.
It's estimated that if all City Light program energy savings acquired since 1977 were available today, that would power the homes of nearly 4 cities the size of Seattle. Not only is that power saved, but also money saved by customers. It's estimated that between 1977 and 2006, the combined savings on all customer bills is over $500 million. Best known conservation efforts are home weatherization and the distribution of energy-saving compact fluorescent light bulbs. But the major savings from conservation is from commercial and industrial customers. Northwestern Industries in Seattle's Inner Bay industrial area produces energy-saving windows. The company switched from making traditional windows to windows that help conserve heat within a building in winter and helps keep the building cooler in summer. This is accomplished with a reflective coating applied to produce what is called low-E glass. After the reflective coating, the company uses large amounts of electricity to heat the glass to make it stronger. This is known as tempering.
Standard tempering technology doesn't work very well with low emissivity glasses. What happens is the glass reflects the heat and becomes very difficult to heat it up and control it properly. So as that business continued to grow for us back in the early 2000 area, we were looking at the more of those specialty types of glass we sold. Our capacity kept dropping as far as what we could actually produce.
City Light found a new type of furnace built in Europe was more efficient and thus uses less electricity. The equipment was much more expensive to purchase, but it would save energy. City Light provided a grant to the company for 35% of the cost to install the new furnace. The company saw a 30% drop in energy use while doubling its production output. That wasn't the only place City Light discovered that Northwestern industries could save electricity and money. City Light helped retrofit a new section of the plant.
This is the new section that was built in the mid-'80s. Seattle City Light helped to fund and research the amount of skylights that could go in here. It was really nice. Originally they had 400, 200 watt dual level metal halide fixtures in here. And recent lighting retrofit, we came in, we replaced the 400 watt fixtures with 4 lamp T5 fixtures. It's set up with a photocell control, so if there are certain light levels are reached, then 2 of the 4 lamps will go out. And if the light gets even brighter, then all 4 will go out. And the shop basically can run without any lighting at all in here.
Again, power saved means lower costs for both the customer and City Light. In addition, it means less air pollution from power generation and fewer tons of greenhouse gases being released into the atmosphere. In 2006 alone, City Light conservation projects reduced carbon dioxide emissions by 584,000 tons, the same amount of CO2 produced by 129,000 automobiles in a year. City Light's energy management analysts have found very specific ways to individualize conservation for customers. While heating is a big consumer of electricity for the windows manufacturer, refrigeration is the big energy consumer for another City Light customer. Trident Seafood uses freezers to keep tons of prepared fish products frozen. The seafood processor found that it was spending a lot of money because of an inefficient freezer door system.
Freezer doors in an operations like ours can waste a lot of energy unless they can open and close very quickly. The reason for that is every time these doors are open, the cold air in the freezer wants to meet this warmer, humid air out here on the dock. So the more they're closed, the more energy we save. Our forklift drivers are in and out of these doors within an 18-hour period, 5.5 days a week. So they're open constantly.
The old doors wouldn't reliably open or close. City Light helped with a study and a grant to supply new doors.
We estimate that $4,700 were saved in a year. These doors have actually improved productivity for the forklift drivers as well.
Trident Seafood also uses compressors to operate freezers and much of the machinery used to process and package its products. Compressors use a lot of electricity. City Light energy management analyst Sin Tran was able to work with the company to replace its less efficient compressors with new state-of-the-art models. Another huge investment was with lighting upgrades, which is now saving 445,000 kilowatt hours per year. In total, the seafood company has received over $200,000 from City Light for installation of energy conservation equipment. Again, this is electricity that City Light doesn't have to produce or buy from other power generating sources. Seattle City Light's conservation projects can have unexpected benefits for its customers. Kwieciak Marine Industries learned that adding money-saving conservation measures doesn't mean having to accept a reduced quality of the final product.
I expected to save energy, and I know we are. I can see that on our light bills. And I figured that we would get decent light to the floor, but I wasn't convinced that fluorescence 40 or 50 feet up in the air was really going to be an improvement in the lighting on the floor. And we were all stunned. It was night and day, remarkable difference. Everybody on the floor walked in the next day and went, wow, this is terrific.
Conservation will continue to play a major role in serving a growing Seattle without a major growth in demand for electricity. Conservation is now considered a significant part of City Light's generating portfolios, along with the hydroelectric projects that have supplied power to Seattle customers over the past century. This is Peter Clark reporting for Seattle City Light.
Just 3 hours from Seattle, rugged alpine beauty and the power of human engineering. It's all in Seattle City Light's company town of Newhalem, Washington, deep in the heart of the North Cascades. On the way, you might see herds of elk, soaring bald eagles, or even spawning salmon. Whether you stay for the day or perhaps overnight, there's plenty to do for everyone. The adventure begins at the Skagit Information Center, 130 miles northeast of Seattle in Newhalem, which is just off picturesque State Route 20, the North Cascades Highway. Follow Interstate 5 to exit 232 and head east for 60 miles to milepost 120.
Welcome to Newhalem, Seattle City Light's company town. Visitors just like you have been coming here since 1924 to tour the Skagit Power Project. Truth is, the colorful history of Newhalem is all around you.
One of our most popular tours, offered from June to September, is the Diablo Lake Adventure. It's a 2.5-hour escorted tour and boat excursion up the rugged and narrow Diablo Lake Canyon. A custom coach bus will take you across the very top of Diablo Dam, built back in the 1930s. Visitors then ply the turquoise green waters of Diablo Lake aboard the Alice Ross III and are surrounded by the jagged, snow-capped peaks of the North Cascades. The trip is completely wheelchair accessible. This adventure truly showcases the alpine grandeur to be found in the rugged North Cascades, and reservations are required. On the Diablo Lake Adventure, you will fast realize why people call this area the American Alps. For more information on this tour, go to www.skagittours.com, or in Newhalem, visit the Skagit Information Center or the great folks at the Skagit General Store for more information.
But if you feel like walking around, there is far more to see. From the beauty of Ladder Creek Falls Garden to the craftsman-style homes of Silkstocking Row. We call it Newhalem's Walking Tour because you can get to all of these places on foot.
In its heyday, Newhalem was a bustling little town with hundreds of workers and their families. Decorative lights lined Main Street, gardens flourished on the grounds of Newhalem, and hundreds of workers lived here year-round, building the 3 dams making up the Skagit Power Project. Let's start the walking tour with Bunkhouse 23. It's just next door to the Information Center. Built in 1934 to house Newhalem's growing worker population, visiting Seattle City Light employees still bunk here for the night. Across the street is the Skagit General Store, which used to be the commissary, the place where workers were able to buy groceries and other goods. The Skagit General Store maintains that tradition by still stocking groceries and souvenirs. And don't forget about their incredible fudge.
People come in here and say, I gotta have the fudge. I come to the Skagit General Store just for the fudge.
Just for the fudge. Dozens and dozens and dozens, yes.
You're
and we
regular.
ship it out. We ship it out all over the world. We ship it out to Germany, New York. We ship it to Australia, New Zealand. We've shipped to Japan.
Behind the old commissary were more bunkhouses for both workers and visitors. This was the old Cook's Bunkhouse, which was built in 1921 and now serves as a library for Seattle City Light employees. Just down from the library and fronting Main Street is the mess hall, now called the Gorge Inn, and it may be one of the most famous buildings here. Why? Well, starting in 1928, visitors began journeying to Newhalem for overnight visits. Arriving by train, they'd get a full tour of the area, gander at the lush gardens that used to flourish here, and settle in for an all-you-can-eat chicken dinner at the mess hall. For many, that made the trip worthwhile, as well as famous. The mess hall was also the main area that workers ate when the tours were not taking place, and it served this purpose right through the 1970s.
If you come down Main Street, you'll come to this suspension bridge. It crosses the Skagit River. At the other end of it is the Trail of the Cedars, which takes you directly to the Newhalem Powerhouse.
This beautiful trail is a short hike that winds through a shaded cedar forest to the Newhalem Powerhouse, the little plant that provided power to the area while Gorge Dam was being built. It's the oldest generating plant in the system. Round trip, this excursion is a mile long, but well worth it. On the way back from the Newhalem Powerhouse hike, take a look at the large craftsman-style homes built in the 20s that sit off to your left. This area is called Silkstocking Row. It's where the bosses and managers lived as the dams were being built. The neighborhood got its nickname from wisecracking employees. They claimed only the bosses' wives could afford fineries like silk stockings. Heading back to the information center is Courier Hall, named after Dana Courier, a longtime City Light employee. This building sits on the footprint of the Big Hall, the main social gathering place for workers living up here years ago. The Big Hall hosted everything from weekend dances to boxing events and was the place for workers to unwind. Once you get back to the information center, go to the rear of the building and take a look at the big grassy field that lies there. This too was a residential area complete with roads, tent cabins, and wood frame houses. The old trees that still grow in this grassy field might help you imagine this neighborhood that is now nothing more than a memory. There are also more stops that are definitely worth the visit. The first is the Gorge Powerhouse and Ladder Creek Falls and Garden that lies next to it. This is the suspension bridge to the Gorge Powerhouse and the Ladder Creek Falls and Garden. It is 3/10 of a mile from the Skagit Information Center, so you can either walk over here or drive. This is also a terrific place to see salmon spawning. As you cross the bridge spanning the Skagit River, you'll see the Gorge Powerhouse. This was the first main generating facility that provided power to Seattle, and there's a public viewing room here. But Ladder Creek Falls Garden is the real showstopper. The area is gorgeous day or night. During the day, you can hike the paths and see the beauty of the waterfall. At night, the area is transformed. The Gorge Powerhouse becomes an artistic silhouette, and the falls, brightly lit by colored lights, resemble flowing lava. This, too, was one of the most popular destinations for overnight visitors years ago. And during the summer, once night falls, the lights still come on to fascinate visitors. The inspiration for this entire hydroelectric project, the lush gardens, and the famous tours came from one man, J.D. Ross, one of Seattle City Light's first superintendents. When he died in 1939, he was buried in Newhalem, a place he considered his true home. J.D. Ross and his wife Alice are buried in a crypt just across Highway 20. It, too, is just a short walk from the information center. On the crypt, you'll also find the eulogy that President Franklin D. Roosevelt penned for Ross when he died. Like we said, there is plenty to do for everyone. The Skagit Power Project and Newhalem are listed on the National Register of Historic Places and are a must-see for travelers eager for adventure and incredible scenic beauty all in one place. So go out there and explore. I'm Kelly Gunther for Seattle City Light.
Be sure to make a reservation if you want to take the lake cruise. If you belong to a club or church that likes to take group outings, Skagit Tours offers a great day adventure at a very reasonable price. Visit the website at skagittours.com for more information. That's all for this edition of Netline. Thanks for watching. I'm Wayne Knippel.